Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to episode 3 of Those Podcast Guys. And we are Those Podcast Guys. I'm Cal.
I'm Ian.
And today we're going to be talking about continuity.
Yes.
And headcanon and things like that, and how frustrating it can be for longtime readers, how intimidating it can be for new readers, and all that stuff. So, looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it's something you and I have talked about a lot over the years.
Oh yeah.
And so there's a question right now in the industry: is continuity a necessity?
Yeah.
Like I'm seeing things pop up on Google, like should the Marvel Universe reboot? Because if any viewers are not aware, the Marvel Universe has never had a full reboot.
Not a full one.
No.
Like, there's been some renumbering and things like that that's happened here. You've had a few characters go through some revamps and stuff, but as far as like a universe-wide thing, something that DC is far more known for probably than any other comic company in existence right now. Like, they have zero issues.
Yeah,
rebooting.
Like, what? It's Tuesday. Reboot.
They do not care. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to talk about today. He and I, pretty much what got us into wanting to talk about continuity and rebooting and all of that kind of stuff was, it's been a good while back. You and I had a conversation. We were talking about Thor, and we kind of revisited, because you're starting to get into Thor, a little bit, and Thor like I am with Superman and all that. Thor's my top Marvel guy. I'm wearing a Marvel shirt today, so because we've done some pretty DC heavy content so far, about 3 hours worth. So I figured I would wear something Marvel related. But Thor is my top Marvel guy, followed very, very closely by Magneto. And most of the time I say Cap is my third, but depending on how I'm feeling, Daredevil can take his spot real easy. Like, as I'm a big Daredevil fan, you know that.
Yeah.
And I really don't have a fifth slot. I'm just not crazy about Marvel. But anywho, that's besides the point. So we revisited this conversation that we had a while back. I was actually walking into a comic shop when we were kind of either walking in or walking out. I can't remember which one. When we brought this up with Thor, and you didn't ask me per se about this. I was like, man, it's so frustrating for Thor. And I used Thor as the reference because that's the one that I've read so much. There are so many Thor #1s.
Oh yeah.
It's unreal. Like Thor, God of Thunder, #1. Thor, the Mighty Thor.
Just Thor.
Thor, Thor of Asgard. There's so many, and so for a new reader, it can be very intimidating. Like as much as I don't care for the MCU, there are aspects of it that I do enjoy, but overall, I don't care for it. The MCU has kind of become its own Marvel method kind of thing, and I'm not going to get into the Marvel method.
That's a whole episode in and of itself.
Yeah, but the MCU has kind of become like the live action version of the Marvel method. But as critical as I am about the MCU did its job in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it got a lot more people into the brand. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that was like, okay, yeah, like, just say Thor, for example. Like, okay, I like Thor. He's my favorite one. Liked him. Let's try to jump into some comics. Read some comics and see how that goes. So let's
good luck.
Like, where's Thor #1? Like, just imagine Googling Thor #1 or Thor first issue or whatever, and you're gonna see like Journey into Mystery and all that, and there you go, like, what the heck is Journey into Mystery? Right. Like, why does the artwork look like a comic strip or something? It's just like,
this looks like Bazooka Joe.
Yeah, like they're going to be extremely confused
Mm-hmm.
And it would be really, really easy for them to just be like, you know what, I'm just going to stick with the movies. And just like that, Marvel has lost a potential reader, all because of how many times everything starts over. And it seems like,
now that is a more recent practice, like the last, I'll say 10, 20 years.
yeah.
Much more so than it was previously.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's definitely in the last 20 years. It's definitely picked up. It seems like just about sometimes anytime they go to change writers,
Now,
it's like we started over at number one.
Yeah.
Like a new, like not necessarily arcs, because sometimes you'll have the same writer do like 3 or 4, or Jason Aaron was on Thor for a good while.
Yeah.
Before he jumped off, and but even he had Thor, God of Thunder, and then after God of Thunder, spoiler. I mean, I'm sure you've seen the movie by now, but like Jane Foster becomes Thor. Now it's the Mighty Thor.
Mm-hmm.
Starts over at number one, and like so, even with the same writer, if someone just says, "Oh, start with Jason Aaron's run on Thor. It's really good." Like, okay, cool, let's go. And then you're looking at 2 different issues: Thor, God of Thunder, number 1 by Jason Aaron, The Mighty Thor, number 1 by Jason Aaron. Like,
didn't Aaron have a third and possibly a fourth title? One just called Thor.
He had one called The Unworthy Thor.
Yeah, and that's another one I was going to bring up.
Yeah. Which I have it trade paperback form, and like, yeah, it can just get very, very, very confusing and intimidating for new readers and all of that. And so that's a lot on like the Marvel side. The DC side of things, I mean, they do that, but I don't think it's necessarily quite as heavy as Marvel is.
Agreed.
But also DC, is very happy with just throw a reboot out there. Let's and let's see what happens. Like, but you have some reading material right here, that could help people, like if they want to jump into, like, if you're confused about where it will, like a good jumping point in for like Marvel or something like that. Like, you've got some stuff here that can potentially help some people out.
Yeah. So, a little bit of history. So mainline Marvel continuity is often referred to as 616 or Universe 616. And this wasn't always like the designated term or anything. And this came about, I want to say, in the early 80s. This run here on Captain Britain, because I'm a Captain Britain fan. Thank you. Hold your applause.
All 3 of you.
But none other than the illustrious Alan Moore created the designation of 616. And this is an amazing story. You don't have to be well-versed in X-Men or Captain Britain really to just dive in. It's amazing. But yeah, Alan Moore, Alan Davis, Captain Britain. Check it out. Also, Marvel started doing this thing a few years ago. And I told you about it. And it was these series of books called like X-Men Grand Design, Fantastic Four Grand Design, Hulk Grand Design.
It's just those 3? Or that's just the examples you give?
No, right now it's just those 3.
Okay.
And each volume was only 2 issues. And each issue might cover, or like each 2-issue set might cover like 10 years. The X-Men had 3 2-issue sets. So here's X-Men Grand Design, Volume 1. Covers the first 10 years or so of X-Men history by the late, great Ed Piskor, R.I.P. Ed. And it's only by Ed Piskor mainly because he wrote and drew it. And so here you have, in one book, roughly 10 years of continuity, and it's told in the order that it happened, not the order in which it was revealed.
It's a very condensed Like, it's a very, like, I don't know any other way to put it. It's like Marvel Comics for Dummies.
Yeah.
Like, it's a very condensed, like, hey, you want to know what happened in, like, this decade period? Like, read this.
Yeah, this is like X-Men History 101.
Yeah, pretty much.
And Tom Scioli, shout out to Tom. He did the Fantastic Four grand design, and I love what he did here. The coloring is very unique. You see the faux.
If you grew up on classic comics like we did, you open this thing up, it's gonna just, the nostalgia's gonna.
But like the coloring is great. You see the faux aging and even like fake like grease spots and stuff, because we all did it whenever we were kids. Don't lie.
We all
But
eating your Cheetos or Doritos or whatever, and then
yeah, and so I mean, these are fantastic resources.
No pun intended.
Yeah. But yeah, fantastic resources for anybody wanting to get in on the ground level. So there's X-Men Grand Design, X-Men Grand Design Second Genesis, and X-Men Grand Design Extinction. Those three cover the first nearly 30 years of X-Men history. This covers like the first 10 for Fantastic Four, and Hulk Grand Design covers the first 10 years of the Hulk. Now, right now, like as I said earlier, there is a debate of, has the comics industry outgrown continuity? And with multiversal, things being not just in comics but in movies now, I know a lot of guys, I talk to them all the time, that for them, what's canon to them is the movies, not the comics.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, that's not right. Like, originally it was X, Y, and Z.
I used to work with guys like that to where they would just straight up say they don't care about the comics. They're only concerned about watching the movies and everything. And it's like, it took me a little while. Like, I had to wrestle with the fact to where it's like I think that was whenever I really started figuring out, like, oh, there's people out there that like have their own canon. Mm-hmm. Like, they don't care. Like, it does not matter to them. Like, whatever happened in this book is irrelevant to me. This is what I care about.
Yeah.
And how do you argue with somebody like that at that point? You know what I mean?
Also, let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
If you're somewhat new to comics and it's love of various movies and stuff that have brought you here, headcanon and continuity might be terms you've heard bandied about. What do they mean? Continuity is simply the order in which things happen. And
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, just as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. And headcanon is, like he was saying, okay, X-Men, goes from like 1963 to up to now. But my personal headcanon, it ends with, Chris Claremont.
Well, I have a prime example of that, because I have a headcanon for myself, and I'm not wanting to start this big debate with it. We might talk about this in a future episode one day, but with Star Wars. Mm. Like, I went just about my whole life after Return of the Jedi, when novels were coming out and stuff, and some of the novels that I read, to me, it's like, that's canon. That's how the story goes. Mm-hmm. Then the mouse acquires Star Wars, and then just turns around and says, nope, none of that's canon anymore. We're going to start over. I'm not going to lie. I just straight up was like, no.
Yeah, that's BS.
Like, I don't buy it. And it's all going to be labeled like legends now. And I'm like, I don't care. Oh no, these new movies is what the new canon. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not buying any of this nonsense that y'all are trying to do. I'm just not. I mean, they even went as far as to like trying to reintroduce like Thrawn and all that kind of stuff and everything, and I was just like, I don't care. You're not gonna win this with me.
Yeah.
I literally went decades going, this is the story, and you're just gonna tell me doesn't count anymore, and you think that's it? No. So my headcanon is prequels 1, 2, 3, originals 4, 5, 6, and then the old EU.
Yeah.
like the old novels and stuff like that.
The
And
Thrawn trilogy,
yeah,
the Yuuzhan Vaughn, all that.
the way, spoilers, the way Chewbacca and all them like bite it and all that kind of stuff, like that's my canon for Star Wars.
I agree with you.
And they did a lot of prequel stuff. Like there was some prequel. Darth Maul is my favorite Star Wars character, and there was two prequel novels that they had written. That's canon to this, and I'm like, okay, and they were great stories. Mouse says, no, they're not canon no more. And I'm like, no, I'm not listening to you. I'm just not. You know what I mean? And so I don't care about this new batch of Star Wars stuff that they do. And so that's head canon, basically, to where it's like you had this one story that was going this way, and then it branches off. And the company is trying to say, this is canon. This is what you want to believe. Well, if the reader or watcher or whatever is like, I don't feel like going that way, I'm gonna go this way instead, then that's your head canon. That's the difference.
Yeah. Now, since we are talking about continuity, I think I've mentioned this before. I may not have. But one of the major differences between Marvel and DC, out of the big two, is Marvel, at least in the Silver Age, and actually even going back to the Golden Age, they were Marvel was designed from the outset, Marvel Timely Atlas, whatever you want to call it, designed from the outset to be this interactive set of books. I mean, you had the Submariner and the Human Torch and Captain America all, kind of guesting in each other's stuff.
Uh-huh.
With DC, even though Marvel technically debuted in 39, DC debuted in largely 38 with Action Comics.
As they're mostly known as.
Yeah.
And all that. As far as the superhero stuff goes.
Yeah.
They had been around longer. But you and I was talking about, just throwing this out there. Action Comics #1. Everyone is the very infamous cover, Superman holding the car and all that kind of stuff, and think, oh, that's the first Superman comic. There were other stories in there.
Yeah.
Like it was like
it's like a 64-page
issue.
Yeah.
It's like there's a bunch of little. It was called Action Comics. It was meant for like action-packed stories and stuff like that. And they just so happened to hey, we're going to start up this new series, Action Comics and everything. What's some of the stories that y'all have? And pitches were done, and then one of them was, we have this really super strong guy, got this cool artwork, him picking up a car. And I was like, oh, that's our cover. You know what I mean?
Give those guys $100 and buy the rights.
And so then all of a sudden, it's Action Comics #1 comes out, and it's like everyone's like, hey, we want more of that superhero guy. We don't care about the spies, or we don't care about we want more of that bright colored superhero guy. We liked him.
Looks like a circus strongman.
I mean, that's why he wears the trunks.
Yeah.
Everyone likes to crack the joke. He doesn't know how to wear his underwear and everything. They're strongman trunks. It's what they are.
Gives them support.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
So whenever, DC came about, you had, some you might have Batman, Superman, and Robin on one cover acting like they're playing baseball, or they're sitting on a battleship, and this is all very World War II propaganda era. But for the most part, there wasn't a whole lot of crossover between the books. And probably the kind of the shot heard around the world for that would be the debut of the Justice League.
Yeah. Or Justice Society.
Yeah.
Everyone. Yeah, that was probably the one to where it's oh man, all of these guys that's been in all these little separate titles and everything is just all came together. So, yeah.
And so, again, since we're discussing the Holy Grail / the millstone around people's neck being continuity, you have one of the major milestones of continuity here.
Probably, if you talk about anything continuity-wise, this must be in the conversation.
It's the Big Daddy.
This is the game changer. This was the contrary to popular belief, was not the first big major event in comic book history.
We'll cover that later.
But we will. But this was the first big, like, it was the first big event dealing with, like, multiverse stuff that simultaneously, after this was over, there was this big major aftermath that it's a tagline that is completely overused today. But this was the first one that says the universe will change forever.
Yeah.
Like,
nothing will ever be the same.
Yeah. So, if you've never read Crisis on Infinite Earths, I could not recommend it more. This is very iconic cover artwork done by Alex Ross and all that. Yeah. Like, this is just, like, I don't have enough positive things to say about Crisis.
So, have I ever told you the story of me telling, hello, Hannah and Gracie, that's my daughters. I used to tell them, like, stories of, like, comic book storylines as bedtime stories.
Yeah, you told me that.
And one time, because, spoilers, Barry Allen dies in issue 8 of 12.
If you don't know that, I mean, that's on you. Like, I hate to sound like that.
So, I remember, like, I told him the whole lead up with, Barry killing Reverse Flash, and he's on trial, and then he gets sucked into the future, and then Crisis, and he dies in Crisis. And I was telling him how, he ran so fast to contain the Anti-Monitor's, energy, and he's going so fast, he's tearing himself apart and flashing in and out of time. And Gracie, she might have been 5 at the time. And Gracie started crying, and I was like, Gracie, what are you crying for? She's like, he died to save all of us. Like,
like Barry's Jesus Christ. Wow. Yeah, I never knew that. But yeah, that's the Anti-Monitor right there. Pretty much like quintessential big bad guy.
oh yeah.
Like, he's very, and I love DC for it. They do not use him often.
No, you can't.
Like, because he very easily could have just become this just completely over. We'll just bring back the Anti-Monitor. Like, you know what I mean? He could have become just this completely overused. That's probably the most iconic cover that most people know Crisis from. Just all the different heroes from multiple universes. There's like 3 or 4 different Superman. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. There's 3, 4 sure Supermen here, and then like multiple Flashes and all that stuff. Like, this was like DC's way of basically saying everything that we're currently talking about was DC saying, you know what? We've kind of bogged down our own universe.
Yep.
And from everything that we've already talked about, saying, like, where does a new reader jump in? Like, well, if they want to read Superman, like, do they just start with Superman? Do they start with Superman #1? Do they have to jump all the way back to Action Comics #1? Superman was a guest star in Batman and Wonder Woman. Do they need to read those as well? Like it was just this big congested thing. And so DC decided we're just going to hit the reset button.
Yep.
Unprecedented.
Like, and that gave us post-crisis continuity.
Yeah, pretty much. Which is, if that term doesn't make any sense to you, post-crisis obviously means after the event. I don't want to insult y'all's intelligence, but post-crisis continuity is, I want you to think of Superman, and basically the Superman in comics that you've known your entire life. If you're born, after a certain point, like, for the vast majority of your life, we'll say it like that. Like, after Crisis happened, this was the Superman of the 90s, died against Doomsday.
Yeah, that's
went up against, dealt with Hush, or was in Hush. Sorry, didn't deal with Hush, and then just, for tomorrow, all of that stuff, and then we're going to jump more into it. But then, like, there was a lull with the New 52, but then after the New 52, the post-crisis Superman returned.
Yeah.
So even after the New 52, that Superman is still, like, he's still around.
Yeah.
He's one of the few, like, original characters that is still around.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so it was very unprecedented. It was very bold. Unfortunately, it set a trend for them. Yeah. To where it's kind of like, oh, we're in a bind.
Time for a crisis.
Like, yeah, I mean, that's another thing that they did is that they did, and we're going to cover that more. We're doing another episode on events in comics and everything. And it kind of became like a tradition for DC to do another event that is called Crisis. Whether it's like Dark Crisis or just Infinite Crisis. There was Final Crisis. Like, I think there was a Dark Universe Crisis here recently, like with the dark metal stuff.
There was also Heroes in Crisis.
Heroes in Crisis, yeah. Like, it just became just one of their things to do. And a lot of times, like, they've been pretty big hits, like with the Crisis event. Like, it's kind of like they know that
word carries weight.
Yeah, like whenever you mention Crisis, like, you better bring your A game. Like, especially with DC. So, yeah. So DC gets reset because everything had become bogged down with what we're talking about and everything. And so then, whenever I say everything rebooted.
Oh, yeah.
Everything rebooted. I mean, we're talking like the powers of Superman had gotten completely out of control.
Dude was juggling planets and sneezing away galaxies.
There is an issue. I cannot remember what issue it is. Just Google it. There, just to give you guys an idea as to how overpowered Superman had become. That there is an issue somewhere out there where they were having like a meeting or they're getting ready to do they're planning something or whatever. He felt a sneeze coming on. He literally flies away to an uninhabited galaxy. Had to find it. That's how fast he was. Like, just think about whenever you feel a sneeze coming versus, yeah. And then, like, think about whenever you, like, feel the sneeze coming versus when you actually sneeze. He went to an uninhabited galaxy, searched every single planet, found out there were no life forms or anything like that on those planets, then sneezed. The reason he had to find that galaxy was because his sneeze destroyed all the planets and the moons and things like that. I love Superman. That's ridiculous. There's no reason for a character other than the Anti-Monitor to have like that level of power.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And this was supposed to be DC's poster boy at the time. And like, you're supposed to be worried about this guy? Like, why am I going to read an issue? Like, why am I going to read the next issue? Like, dude just sneezed a galaxy out of existence. There's nothing that can mess with him. Like,
I wonder if Superman can sneeze and keep his eyes open.
He probably can. He probably can. He can probably take Chuck Norris.
Hey now, hey,
But yeah, so they completely rebooted everything, changed powers, like really, grounded Superman back and everything like that. And like, okay,
touched up origins.
Yep, touched up some origins here and there. We're starting over, and then off DC goes. Mm-hmm. Pretty much. What's Marvel doing? Just rolling.
Yep.
Like, nope, we're good. Just still let everything just keep rolling the way that it's been rolling.
Possibly the closest Marvel has come to a reboot would be Onslaught and Heroes Return. Onslaught was an event in the 90s whenever Marvel was in financial straits. The event was brought about for editorial reasons. Shout out to Sal and the guys at Comic Pop. And so basically, Onslaught, the event ends with the heroes with the lowest selling titles basically being sucked into this other universe, and then they come back and like a year has passed. And they have updated origins and, just kind of a whole new lease. That's whenever Jim Lee did his run on Fantastic Four.
I would like to back up just a hair and like just also say that like DC was not doing super great prior to
No,
this
they were not.
this reboot. Like there was an event, not really a comic book event, more like an industry event that was called the DC Implosion, in which DC basically was like, I mean, they axed some titles.
We
that's
need what led to Barry getting killed.
We need to congest like the comic industry was not doing super great, and they needed to. Look, he's in camera. This is one of my dogs. we just have him in here with us, so yeah, you might see him pop up like a groundhog every now and then. So yeah, like DC was just not doing super great, and that's what part of the reason also what led to the Crisis on Infinite Earths. If you're not into comics, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw out there, and the only reason I'm gonna say this is because I own both versions of this. If you're not into comics and you're more of just a reader, there's a lot of novelizations of these events and everything. Like I personally own the deluxe edition which is all 12 issues. It's a pretty thick book, but then there's a novelization to it, to where if you're not into reading comics and everything like that, but you like reading books, you can still read some of this. Like they've done I have a novelization of the Death and Return of Superman. I have novelization to Kingdom Come. Like I have multiple novelizations, and one day we'll talk about Kingdom Come, believe me. So but yeah, so I just wanted to throw that in there, that DC it wasn't just, oh, our universe has gotten confusing, we need to reboot everything. Like DC was in trouble.
Oh yeah.
And so they were like, no, we need to do something major to try and get back on track.
Well, I think part of the reason for that implosion was DC was kind of on the losing end of the 1970s price wars with Marvel, where Marvel basically did this fake out where they're like, you know what, we're going to up our prices and give like 2 to 4 extra pages per issue. Well, then as soon as they announced that, and this is like classic bait and switch, DC's like, hey, yeah, we're going to up our prices too. And so Marvel waits for DC to up their prices, if I'm remembering correctly. Waits for DC to up their prices, and then Marvel goes back down in price.
Don't want to slow down,
like, just
boy.
give them the finger.
Yeah, but so DC was trying to go in a different direction. They knew they were in trouble and all that. This event happened like in the 80s. What was it? What year?
84 or 85.
Yeah, 84 or 85. Well, we just did an episode last time on what came out in 1989. I should let you know the direction that DC was trying to go into, like not comic book related or anything, but it's like, it was kind of this didn't just kind of reset the DC mentality for comics. It kind of reset them for like a company.
Oh,
in general.
Yeah.
Because like I said, like we talked about in the last episode and everything, if you're used to comic books the same way TV watchers were used to the Adam West Batman TV series, well then you reboot everything with Crisis. Adam West Batman series goes away.
Yeah.
Michael Keaton's Batman steps up. Frank Miller's
Batman Year One.
Immediately following Batman this. Year One, and then like with they really went more. Well, their tagline was like, "Comics ain't for kids no more." Right. That may not be the exact phrase, but
DC Comics aren't just for kids.
Yeah, it was something like that, basically saying this isn't for kids no more. Like we're aiming to get more of an adult audience, and so the continuity goes from there. But again, like I said, what's Marvel doing? Oh, they're just rolling right along,
trucking along.
just doing their own thing.
Now, you brought up, immediately following Post Crisis, like I said, Batman Year One and John Byrne's amazing run on Superman with Man of Steel. So, again, Crisis was like 85, 86. Do you remember what else happened in 86?
No.
Okay.
Not off the top of my head.
Dark Knight Returns and Watchmen.
Okay. Yeah.
And in a way, those two things really point to the future of DC.
Yeah.
Because, and not just literally, but the fact that another point in this conversation is each company's different perspective on continuity. Marvel seems to really adhere to their in-universe continuity. Any kind of like multiversal thing wasn't really a thing with Marvel until Ultimate Marvel came out in late 90s, early aughts, something like that.
The Ultimate Universe, I think it came out in like 2000, 2001.
Okay,
something like that.
So Marvel's been pretty, just dipping a toe in the water here and there for the most part with multiversal stories. DC, on the other hand, I would say beginning in 1986 with Dark Knight Returns, that became one of their staple of a reader's diet. Here's some Elseworlds tales and whatever. And so they really planted their flag in that territory.
Yeah, DC really very much became the company of the multiverse.
Yeah.
To where, and it was a great idea to do that. To where it's like, okay, we don't want to be in this situation again. We don't want to get everything bogged down again the way that it was before and all that. So it's like, if you have something really cool, a story that you want to tell, you don't have to fit it in the main universe. We'll just call it Elseworlds.
Yeah.
Takes place on a different Earth.
Yep.
Alternate dimension. Simple as that. That's like Swamp Thing for the longest time was, designated as in a different universe. Wasn't part of the main continuity and all of that. Obviously, like he just mentioned, Dark Knight Returns, Batman Year One, pretty much all the Frank Miller Batman stuff is its own separate universe.
Not Year One. Year One Year One is still considered part of just Post Crisis, and it's part of the DK universe.
Okay. But they really started, and this is whenever you start getting a whole lot of different Elseworld stuff. To where there was one I've got, and they wouldn't all these just big giant stories. Some of them was just little single issues.
Yeah, one shots.
And I've got one. I think it was called Speeding Bullets.
I've got that.
Yeah. That's the one where Superman lands, but he's raised by the Waynes. Yeah, it's pretty cool. A Kryptonian becomes Batman. It's pretty cool. And that's whenever little multiverse things like that started just popping up and all of that. And then this is whenever you can jump into the whole headcanon thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's plenty of people out there, depending on how I'm feeling, sometimes views The Dark Knight Returns as Batman's definitive end. It goes no further than that. You know what I mean?
It's no secret between it. I love the DKU.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah. We're big fans. I like the Master Race.
Not that Master Race.
Yeah. But yeah, we love what Frank Miller's done with Batman, and a lot it has a beginning, a middle, seemingly an end. It doesn't really seem like he's going to be jumping. He's too gung-ho to jump back into it nowadays. I don't know if he had any more that he was wanting to do with it.
There was some discussion of wanting to go further with it, especially, Master Race kind of ends with a whole new lease.
Yeah.
For the DKU, with Bruce being, reversed in age, and then I'm pretty sure there were some more stories that Frank wanted to tell with Carrie Kelly.
Yeah. My only thing is like DK3 was so good, and it's like,
let it end there.
yeah,
Like, let's go out on a high note.
Yeah, it's like, because it's like, you also did All Star Batman and Robin, so it's like we know you can go from one end to the other, like very very quickly in the same universe. So it's like,
okay. This brings up an amazing example of cross company headcanon. Okay. There is a comic published by Image called Sex. That's the name of it.
Most of us have done it.
Yeah. And it deals with a very like pseudo Batman who's just retired and is trying to adjust to life and, bring things about. And what's the writer's name? Joe Casey. Joe Casey's intent was basically, let's tell the story between the end of Batman's career and Dark Knight Returns. But I don't want to be hemmed in by legalities and editorialism, so like I'll just use my own characters. I'll call my Batman figure Armored Saint, wink. So like whenever I have my like Dark Knight Universe stuff on the shelf, it's the DK stuff. I got Holy Terror in there, and then between like Last Crusade and Dark Knight Returns, volumes of Sex by Joe Casey.
Okay. Holy Terror is an episode in and of itself. Just throwing that out there.
we can do that on the Miller episode.
Sure, we can do that. But yeah, so and that's like I said, like I don't want to just sound repetitive, but that's a good example of like headcanon, to where it's so far into Batman's life, you could still be reading Batman today,
mm-hmm.
and still in your head say this all leads to the Dark Knight Returns.
Yep,
and you don't have to mess with Dark Knight Strikes Back. You don't have to mess with DK3.
Holy Terror, nothing like that.
None of that. You can just be like, Dark Knight Returns is it.
Yeah.
Like, and so that's a great example for headcanon.
Another very entertaining example of headcanon, at least to me, was the great like Jack Kirby epic. Yeah.
We're Team Kirby. We are Team Kirby. Do you hear me?
Kirby's the king. You say anything about it?
Oh, wow. Just got quick-quagged on YouTube.
So
I'm not going to explain that.
So the Jack Kirby epic, it starts with Captain America Comics #1, and even includes some of the backup stories in Captain America Comics #1. So you got Captain America Comics #1. You got Challengers of the Unknown with DC, Fantastic Four, and Thor. His Jack's Silver Age runs, and then because Jack was very enthusiastic about what he was doing with Thor, he pitches this idea to Stan. He's like, "Hey Stan, let's have Ragnarok." And I'm sure Stan was like, "What's that?"
Yeah.
And they don't talk about Ragnarok on Fifth Avenue, Jack. What are you talking about? So Jack wanted to have, in like late 60s, early 70s, he's like, let's do away with Thor and everybody. Let's end the Pantheon and have new gods. And yeah. And so, yeah. So you go from the FF and Thor straight into Jack Kirby's Fourth World Saga. And then from there was another series he did for, I want to say Pacific Comics. And that's called Captain Victory. Jack's intention the entire time was that Captain Victory was the grandson of Darkseid and the son of Orion. And like we see like a silhouette of Darkseid, and we see like a pseudo Orion like from behind, and so and then from there you go to like Omac and Commandy. That's the Jack Kirby epic.
There it is, right there. That's all you need. So, we fast forward. Things are starting to roll. Just keep on rolling for each company. Marvel's still doing its thing. DC is, pretty much starting over fresh. Brand new tales. Brand new, like jumping into the Elseworld stuff. Going a more adult avenue, not just with comics, but with movies and things like that. We start to see like more like TV shows are popping up, like Batman the animated series and all that, like really branching out. They're really starting to hit their stride, just starting to really branch out. The 90s pretty much come and go. Like, there's a few events that happen here and there, like not major giant events, but things are like, there's a whole thing that led up to like the death of Superman and all that. I'm not gonna jump into that and everything. Like, yeah, let's kill him, and like, but I'm not gonna jump into all that and everything. But like, just the fact that DC is like, oh, we're gonna kill Superman, like that should let you know like how ballsy they were being. Or it's like, oh no, let's push the envelope. Let's see what we can do. Like. And it was a big thing. If you don't have any recollection of like the whole, like during the death of Superman and the whole gimmick behind like variant covers and people lined up like around multiple corners, trying to go in there to get the polybag, like it was a big deal. Whenever they decided to kill Superman.
This made news worldwide. This was on TV. This was in USA Today. This was in newspapers.
Yeah, this wasn't something that was just regulated to like, oh, the nerds are hyped up about something. It was like they were talking about it like overseas.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
Hey, Superman he died in the comics. They killed him, and they were like, what? Like it was a big deal. Well, so DC. Really hitting their stride. Things are going good for them. 90s come and go. Marvel is now starting to have a continuity problem. Not really a continuity problem, but kind of like I don't want to say like...
Well, Marvel had definite financial troubles in the 90s.
And they were looking at ways to like, okay, how can we kind of reignite our fans and all of that kind of stuff. And so like, and I don't want to say this in a way of like they just copied DC, because at various points in time both companies have copied one another. It drives me insane whenever so many people are like, oh well, this character is just a rip-off of that character because this one came first. Like that one came first by like 2 months. Like you know what I mean? Like how much goes into planning all of this stuff out and everything. Like just because that one was published 2 months ahead of time doesn't mean like the other one's a ripoff. But so Marvel decides they kind of want to take a page out of DC's book with some of this like multiversal type stuff and everything. It's like, okay, well, we don't want to full-fledged reboot the way that DC did. Like, because they're like, we think that'll tick off a lot of our readers.
They want to give the readers a chance to be unburdened by what has been.
So it's like, what's a good way to do this? Well, DC is really hitting strides with their multiverse stuff. So it's like, okay, let's come up with another universe. Add some titles, throw some writers over there, pretty much start over from scratch. Like it's kind of a reboot, but it runs parallel to our 616 universe.
Yeah.
To where the faithful can continue reading 616, and anyone new who wants to jump on board, like, oh my God, like, it's like in the 2000s, it's like, I want to start reading X-Men. Where do I start? Literally, Ultimate X-Men, #1, right here. Here you go.
Yep.
Like, what about all that? That don't worry about all that. None of that counts.
Yeah.
This is where you start. Ultimate X-Men, #1. Well, what about Spider-Man? Ultimate Spider-Man, #1. Like, Simple as that. It's a good jumping point. And if you liked the Ultimate stuff enough, it could bleed over into the 616 stuff. Like, I remember growing up, my brother was big into the Ultimate Universe. Like, really big into it. He still, to this day, has, like, all the trades collected of Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Spider-Man up till Ultimatum. And we're going to talk about that. But, yeah, up until Ultimatum, he has all of it collected. And I have a few things here, and like I have like the Ultimates, because at that time I was really on the Avengers train. And so like I had like a lot of the Ultimates trades and everything that I was reading and all that, and Ultimate Thor, like I was reading that. So, like that should let you know how interesting to a point the Ultimate Universe was, because what did all I talk about in episodes 1 and 2? That I'm Team DC.
Yeah.
That I'm like, I don't mess with Marvel Comics. I can care less about Marvel Comics. I like certain characters or whatever. And what did I just say? I'm reading Ultimate Marvel Comics. I'm reading the Ultimates and I'm reading Ultimate Thor. Because at that point in time, I was also just reading Thor.
Yeah.
And Avengers stuff here and there, and mostly just getting trades whenever they would come out. I wasn't really messing with individual issues on those. But yeah, and so that was Marvel's pretty much big answer to, like, okay, well, DC reset everything that they had, and they've kind of found their stride. I don't want to say that they were chicken. It was just like, it's like, why reboot it when we can literally just do what they're doing with the multiverse stuff and just have it run parallel? Yeah. And we're pleasing both crowds. And so that's what they decided to do. And the Ultimate Universe was a huge hit.
Yes, it was.
For Marvel. Very, very huge. Prior to doing the Ultimate Universe, they did Max.
Yeah.
I'm not super familiar with Max and all that. So if you want to share some of that.
Yeah, Max was out of mainstream continuity. It wasn't quite 616 or Ultimates. It was just its own thing, pretty self-contained.
Yeah.
And it was basically, and we can get into this in a minute, if you just want to read a crazy story geared towards mature readers, featuring some of your favorite and grittier characters like Deadpool, Punisher, Nick Fury, stuff like that, the Marvel Max line is for you.
It was pretty much made for stuff like Punisher.
Yeah, yeah. And this brings me to the question I asked at the very beginning. Is continuity still necessary?
In a lot of ways, I don't think it is. I mean, we've gotten to the point where there's so many multiversal things and all that, to where it's like, it's really just there for story purposes. But even for story purposes, it's gone on for so long, like it tends to bog things down a lot of times.
So, and continuity, modern continuity, especially in Marvel, is doing no one any favors. I know I've talked about this before, where if you're ending a series and starting over with a new number one every year or every 6 months, you're just like hemorrhaging readers, as far as I'm concerned, because they have no idea where to start.
Your only hope at that point is, and they don't even do this, like the only hope at that point is whenever it comes out in trade, that down at the bottom it's just like for like these years or whatever, it's volume 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's like, the first 2 volumes are by this writer, and the next volume is by this writer, or something like that. And sometimes they do that, but then a lot of times, I just brought up the Jason Aaron stuff a little while ago, to where it's like, I have his entire run on Thor collected in trade, and it's like, it goes Thor, God of Thunder, I think it was 3 volumes for that title, and then Mighty Thor, just volume 1, starts back over at 1, goes like that, And so, like we were talking about earlier, like if I'll tell anybody to read the Jason Aaron run on Thor. Um, so if you tell somebody new that just doesn't know any different, like, man, I really want to jump into Thor. Where do I start? Or read Jason Aaron's run on Thor. Like, okay. And then they go to Books a Million or they go to a comic shop or whatever, and they're holding both volume ones in their hands. Like, they don't. And it's like, okay, well, this one collect, because on the back, a lot of times it says what issues are in there. So it's just going to be like, okay, well, maybe this is both are volume one, but maybe, okay, so this one collects Thor, God of Thunder, issues 1 through 6. Okay, so that's the first 6 issues. Okay, and this one collects the Mighty Thor issues 1 through 6. And it's just like they're going to be lost as a goose.
And I mean, it was so much easier whenever we were both younger. It was like, if you wanted to read, Thor, you just had to read Thor. If you want to read Fantastic Four, just read Fantastic Four.
Mm-hmm.
X-Men, a little more complicated, but at least they weren't starting and stopping and renumbering every 6 months.
I think X-Men has become its own beast entirely just by the amount of titles.
Agreed. And
like X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor. And it just goes, and it's just like, oh my God, like which one, even if they keep the same numbering through each one, it's like, so I got to read the first 6 issues of this one, and then this mini series that was done in this one, and then 24 issues of this one, and then, to read it all. I mean, like, to me, this is just how I feel about it. If you go to read something, and you basically either need to have your phone open for a list, or you need to buy a separate reading companion that tells you like a walkthrough of what to read, you've bogged down your stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like you've made it way too complicated for new readers. And like, I mean, because let's be honest here, they're trying to get new readers. They've got us locked in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, they've got us locked in. So if you want to grow the brand, you got to get new readers. Well, if you're continually making everything confusing for the new readers, you're just going to intimidate them, and they're just going to, man, I ain't messing with that, and they're just going to go on about their business or whatever. And so then it becomes like, wow, all I want to do is just read X-Men. You know what you do? Ultimate X-Men, issue number 1, right there.
So, and I'm not at all discounting that proposal. So now the question is, okay, if continuity, I really don't think continuity has gotten out of control. I think what's gotten out of control is the way the publishers are presenting continuity.
Okay.
With the renumbering thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a problem. It is a problem.
And then with DC, while Marvel is locked into their continuity, they've never rebooted. DC goes from like line-wide alternate timeline to back to a normal timeline. A year later, oh, here's another mega alternate timeline event.
Mm-hmm. Each one with the tagline,
the universe
will never be the same.
same.
It's just like, I heard that last year for the last event, Okay, and so all of that's pretty much happening, and DC, they get to the point to where it's like, you know what, we kind of need to, we feel like we need to reboot again. Oh yeah, they feel like they need to reboot again. And it was very much forced into DC Comics because there was this story that was going to be happening called Flashpoint. I'm a big fan of Flashpoint.
He said big fan.
Big fan. Love Flashpoint. Now, Flashpoint originally was not going to be the jumping point for a new reboot. They just were kind of like, okay, yeah, we'll use that kind of thing. And so that's what they did. And, Flashpoint like, I hate to sound like this, it literally did change everything.
Yeah.
Like, from issue number 1, you're like, I don't know what in the world's going on, or anything. And so Flashpoint comes and goes. And what was birthed from this comes one of the most controversial things in the history of comic books. And it was launched. The very first title was Justice League #1 of the New 52.
It says
Now,
right there.
the New 52 is the bane of many longtime DC comic readers' existence.
I was a little butthurt about it.
There are people that, I mean, they despise the New 52 like there's no tomorrow. I think the New 52 could have been a lot better if they actually had some planning and everything that was involved with it. Because, I mean, just to let you know just how crazy things were with the New 52. I'm just going to give you 2 titles for an example. I don't know if you're aware of this or not. So we had Superman was getting his own title, starting over #1. Action Comics, written by Grant Morrison, starting over #1. Action Comics was going to take place 5 years prior to Superman. Okay? And they were going to be running side by side with one another.
Oh, I remember that.
The writer for Superman had no idea what he was able to use. Because he was like, because basically it's like, so Grant is kind of setting the precedent of what's going to be used like in Superman and all of that. And so he's kind of like, you think maybe I need to know some of like what he's working on or whatever? Well, Grant, he's not saying nothing to nobody or anything. And so like that really tied the hands of the Superman writer, where he didn't know. Like there was a point, I watched a YouTube video yesterday, I believe, and there was a quote, I can't remember for the life of me who it is. I believe it was on the channel Comic Tropes. So shout out to them. Love what they do. Go check it out. But like there was a quote where somebody said they were so lost with what all was really happening in the new 52 that one of them said, we don't even know if there's kryptonite in this universe. Like there was just hardly no communication whatsoever. Like it was a freaking disaster from day one, and it ran way too freaking long operating that way.
Now, I do know that at that time, because I want to say Flashpoint came around not long after Final Crisis. Because Final Crisis...
Yeah, it wasn't too long.
Yeah, because, Grant had his run on Batman. Amazing. And led into Final Crisis, and then I think Flashpoint, and then New 52. So Grant's contract at that time with DC was that he had no editor.
Yeah. It took place around, because I was very excited for the New 52. I'm a big fan of the design of Superman. I cracked the joke earlier that they were trunks and everything, and everyone likes to crack the joke about it, like, oh, he wears his underwear on the outside. But like you're looking at him, like I thought that they gave him a very nice, sleek new look. And so I was like, I dig it. I really like, especially that first promo image of like the Justice League all standing. I was like, I really, really like that design for Superman. And I was...
Costume designed by Jim Lee.
Yeah, I was very, very excited for the New 52. But I was still reading like, the regular DC stuff leading up to it. I was reading, I was obviously reading Flashpoint, and they were still doing, like Action Comics was still running. They was doing this whole thing about like the reign of the Doomsdays and all that kind of stuff at the time. It was like Action Comics had just hit issue 900. And I think it ended with like the reign of the Doomsdays ended like issue 904, 905, something like that, and then boom, New 52 reboot. Action Comics starts over at number 1 and all that. And I mean, I was like, okay, let's jump into it. Let's check it out. And I got as many New 52 titles as I could, like
I remember
virtually every one, because I'm like, I'm jumping into this head first. I want to see what it's about. You know, like I'm not gonna be one of those guys that's gonna be like, oh, this reboot is stupid. Like, no, I'm going to read every title they have and pretty much see if it's what's worth it and what's not. You know. And there were a lot of good things that I think came from the New 52. There was a lot of really cool titles that came from the New 52. Some great stories. Court of Owls, Night of the Owls. Yeah. Like, I loved the whole, like, my favorite Lantern Corps is the Red Lanterns. Mm-hmm. Gave them their own title. You know, I was very much into that and reading that. Obviously read, like, the Superman stuff. The first arc on Detective Comics that they did of the New 52 was freaking fantastic.
Yeah, the Black Mirror.
I think that was Batgirl. No. But, I mean, even the first run for Batgirl was freaking awesome and everything. You know, having Gail Simone have Barbara no longer be Oracle. And she's back to being Batgirl again and all that. That's something to where it's like, oh, okay, we're just changing anything now. All right. So like there was a lot of really cool things that came from the New 52. And as the longer it went on, obviously, you know, you had like Death of the Family and like that was a great Batman arc. You had multiple cool like Superman arcs and everything. But for just about every like one of my favorite Superman stories from the New 52 was Superman Unchained. I have the entire Superman saga pretty much collected from the New 52. His regular title, the Action Comics, the World's Finest with him and Batman, the team up with him and Wonder Woman. Like if it featured Superman, even tie-ins, if it featured Superman in the New 52, I have it on that shelf over there. Like I really, really like the New 52 Superman. But anyway, like I was going to say, for everything that was good about the New 52, there's about 5 things that they screwed up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not even going to get started on Lobo. I'm not happy, and we'll move along from there. But just screwing up so much, like I know it was a reset, but like I gotta be careful with some of the things that I say, because you know one thing that I'm very angry about, but I'm not gonna bring that up. So I'm just gonna. What are your thoughts on the New 52, Ian?
I thought it was a noble experiment. My personal issue with it was the time compression.
Yeah.
I felt that it was, call me crazy for wanting to bring realism into comics, but like for everything that had happened in Batman's career has happened in 10 years.
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Like pretty much everything. Okay. Like from Crisis.
That dude never gets a good night's sleep.
No, from Crisis that happened in 1985 until 2011. Every bit of that in Batman comic history compressed into a 10-year time period.
Well, not just that, because Grant Morrison's run was during post-Crisis, and he incorporated everything from the Silver Age, too, and the Golden Age. And so, and Batman, his position in the New 52 was kind of odd, because they're like, okay, everything still happened. Everything from 1939 up to now happened in 10 years.
Yeah.
It
created more problems than it fixed, because then it's like everything in Batman's history happened. So Hush happened. Okay. Superman's in Hush.
Yeah.
he's nothing like the New 52 Superman. Like, so, like, what's going on here? And so, yeah, New 52 was just, again, it was a disaster from the get-go. And there was some, like, don't get me wrong, it had some initial very, very good sales.
Yeah.
Like, very good.
And
like, multiple issues. I think Justice League #1, like, #1 of this, which I still have the initial, like, as they were coming out, like, I have them collected over there. Like, I still have them and everything. I'll go ahead and share this.
Yeah.
So, I'll share that in a second. But, Justice League #1, I think, went to the printing press like 4 times because it just kept selling out.
Mm-hmm.
I think just the original issue, just like the regular #1, before it went to reprint or whatever like that, it sold like 150,000 copies, something like that. That's a big number for a single issue.
Yeah.
And anyway, I wanted to share this, that I was scrolling through Facebook one time, this particular hardcover that I have of Volume 1, which is called Origin, which it collects, the first arc and everything. The introduction shows like how the League meet each other and everything. We actually get to see what would happen if Batman didn't have his prep time against Superman, because Superman just
wrecks him.
like he's, and wrecks him too. Like he's nothing. We got Cyborg gets an upgrade from the Teen Titans to the Justice League. I was okay with that.
Yeah,
I like Cyborg,
he's
and
very
I'm like,
deserving.
I mean, that's a pretty cool addition and everything like that. But anywho, so I was scrolling through Facebook one time and I saw something. I think it was just from the Midtown Comics up in New York that I was ordering comics from at the time, because there wasn't really a big prior to Hastings opening up, there wasn't a comic shop down here. Right. So the only way to get your floppies was to order them from another state. And I just so happened to pick Midtown Comics. And so I liked them on Facebook and all that stuff. And I saw they had something where it was like, something like, hey, enter to win. You can win a signed copy of Justice League #1, and I was like, or Volume 1. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll enter. We'll see how it goes and everything. I can't even remember what I had to do. Like, just sign up, like, my email and probably answer a question or something or like that.
Who's your favorite character?
Like, are you excited for the New 52? Yeah. But anywho, so yeah, one day I get an email and it's like, congratulations, you won. Verify your address, we'll send you your prize. And I was like, okay, cool. So, I entered it all in and everything. And so, yeah, it's a hardcover Justice League Volume 1 Origin, signed by Jim Lee and Geoff Johns. And it came with this little certificate of authenticity right there. And so, yeah, I don't know if I talked about it in the other episodes that we've done. Alex Ross is my favorite artist of all time. Not just comic books, but just artist, period. Like, Alex Ross is #1. Immediately under him is Jim Lee. So to have something signed by Jim Lee, I'm like, this is... I'm perfectly fine with that. And not so much now. I'm not going to get into details of that. I used to be really big on Geoff Johns. You know that. And because I like his work. I like a lot of the stuff that he's done and everything. But... yeah, so that's a cool thing about that particular volume of Justice League and all that I have. And so, yeah, all that is happening with DC. Marvel, rolling right along.
Yeah. Easy like Sunday morning.
Like, man, sure is loud going on over there at the other company. Well, and they just keep on going. Like, obviously they've expanded their Ultimate Universe a little bit, with a few other extra titles here and there and everything. They had Iron Man at that point. I never read, and this isn't anything against Iron Man. I've never read anything of the Ultimate Iron Man.
I didn't either.
I've never really had a desire. I've read very little Iron Man in my lifetime. And I don't see that changing anytime soon.
I mean, okay, let's be honest. Iron Man was a B tier character at best before Robert Downey Jr.
Pretty much. Like, you and I have talked about that before, that whenever the MCU started, well, I mean, that's one thing that we can really jump into, that really helped or really affected the continuity of Marvel.
Oh, absolutely.
The MCU gets started.
Yep.
And so one of the things that they decide to do is, like, the MCU is really starting to kick up some dust and, like, take off. So they decide, people are starting to kind of come from the movies, go to the comics. Well, they're kind of getting upset that it's like, Tony's nothing like Robert Downey Jr. This is no fun to me. We liked him because he was funny. He was a smart aleck, quick-witted, and all that. Love Robert Downey Jr. He was great in the role for Iron Man.
Same.
And Marvel was like, you want Robert Downey Jr.? I'll give you Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah.
And they virtually revamped Tony to be Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man in the comics. And not quite to the extent as that with other characters like Thor and stuff like that. Yeah, there was a little bit of like Hemsworth likeness that was put on Thor. Like here and there, depending on the artist and everything, because he would change. Sometimes he would be very like Hemsworth looking, and then other times it's back. Nope, he's a freaking Viking. Like, you know what I mean? Like he would just change like that.
And then sometimes just kind of looks like Shawn Michaels or Triple H or something.
Yeah. Like, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, like with the Ultimate Universe was doing so good, what a lot of people don't know is that the MCU is based on the Ultimate Universe.
Yes.
Like, so that's whenever a lot of people would be like, well, this is nothing like the comics. It's like, have you read anything Ultimate wise or anything? No. Well, that's why you think it's nothing like the comics. It's literally based on that universe, pretty much. And so, yeah, the MCU is now full on going. Things are looking pretty good for it and all that. Their sales for the Ultimate Universe is really starting to not doing too great. So what do they decide to do? Again, watch this on I was doing some research this weekend. Watched a video on another YouTube channel. I believe it was still Comic Tropes and everything. Shout out to him again. But Ultimatum. Like my dogs are outside of the room and we both heard something go.
It will go unacknowledged.
But anywho, so like they pretty much decide, okay, we're going to call it quits with the Ultimate Universe. And they get Jeff Loeb come in, like very good writer, very well-known writer and all that. Like, okay, he's going to come in. He's going to do this title called Ultimatum.
This is all you, buddy.
And, Ultimatum is the Ultimate Universe's New 52 disaster condensed into 5 issues. Because it was just with each issue that came out.
That sounds like a glorious mess.
with each issue that came out. I mean, have you read Ultimatum?
I've read parts of Ultimatum.
Okay. From the get-go, out the gate, blood, guts, heroes are dying. And it's just like, okay. Like, complete tonal shift from things that we've seen in previous Ultimate titles and things like that. Like, I mean, like, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, so I'm not going to mention specific characters just in case you want to go out and read it and suffer through it for yourself. But because, I mean, and I only say that because most people dislike it. Not me. I like Ultimatum because I'm the guy that wants to read something that will challenge the status quo. I want to read something, like one thing that I've told you before multiple times on the phone. There's only so many times I can read about Superman saving the world.
Yeah.
Before, after a while,
there's no challenge.
It's the same old, same old. He's been doing this since 1938. Like he's gonna pull through. He's Superman, kind of thing. And so whenever something pops up to where it's like this is new, characters are different, powers are different. Like, as part of the reason why I'm real big into the absolute universe right now. We'll talk more about that later on. But, because I like to be able to read something to where it's like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like, it brings back that excitement. Like, is this character going to live, by the end of this issue and everything? And so that's part of the reason why I liked Ultimatum. My brother did not like Ultimatum. And that's why I said earlier that he had collected all volumes of pretty much the Ultimate Universe and everything up until Ultimatum, because after it was over, he pretty much came up to me, and I can't remember exactly how he put it, but it was kind of like, hey, you like stuff that's like not, that kind of goes against the grain and everything, huh? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, boy, do I have a story for you. Here you go. I'm like, okay. And so I read Ultimatum, and I was like, yeah, I freaking liked it. I mean, it was a game changer. A lot of characters freaking died and everything, but like, I was completely oblivious to the backlash that it was getting. Like, you know what I mean? And whenever I really start digging into it, I'm like, oh man, I'm in the real minority of this. Like, I mean, this isn't like, this isn't something like, agree to disagree kind of thing. Like, no, people hate this. And I'm over here like, I liked it, and they're wanting to throw rocks at me for liking it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, dang, okay. But, yeah, not gonna give any spoilers or anything like that, just in case you want to go read it for yourself. But, big member of a certain team. Issue number 1 drowns. Just dead. No, that's issue 1. No heroics, no nothing. Plays no part to the story whatsoever. Not part of any, like, drowns. Dead. One character, like very, like, monstrous type character, kills and is eating another character. In return, that character gets his head ripped off in revenge for that happening. Many characters
I'm gonna have to sit down and read this.
Many characters are killed off panel, to where it's just like their names are mentioned that they were missing in action or something like that, and then they were just never seen again, so they died. And Cap is pretty much in a coma, like don't know if he's gonna make it. Like, it's one of them things where it's like, part of you wants to sit there and say, like, well, it's Cap, he's going to pull through. But then you look at the other characters that's already died, and you're like, well, you don't know if he's going to make it or not. And, yeah, dude, it was like, characters were getting blown up. Characters were getting shot. I'm talking, like, big name characters, not just these little, like, major hitters with, like, the X-Men and all of that, like, are just, they're falling.
Yeah. And like, we're talking varsity. We ain't talking JV.
No, we're talking like the big name guys, and they're dying, and they are not coming back. Like, this is not going to be a thing like, well, later on, like, oh, there's going to be some kind of reboot and everything's going to reset and they'll be back and all of that later on. Like, no, this was it. Because I believe, unless I'm just really misunderstanding, Ultimatum was meant to be the end to the Ultimate Universe, and it didn't end up being the end of it.
Right.
And so a lot of people, like, it was this massive tonal shift that happened, and that's what caught a lot of people off guard. To where, you read comics and everything, like, yeah, I mean, they're very adult themed, a lot of them are, but for the most part, it's like, it's comics. You know, like unless you're specifically reading one that's like labeled mature audiences only, because a lot of times they will, you know, there are comic ratings, there are teen ones, there are children's ones, there are mature ones,
and then there's adults only.
Yeah, and it's like, mostly like nowadays, if it's like DC Black Label, it's mature slash adults only, and yeah, this was when you're used to reading something that's like, oh, my teenager reads this, like my 14-year-old son reads this, and then like you're a parent and you walk in like, hey kid, what you reading there, and you just look over your shoulder and you see somebody's head getting ripped off,
blood,
or whatever.
guts,
Yeah,
mayhem,
and like spine hanging out of them and all that. Like, what the heck are you reading? Kind of, you know. And then like, and the kid is going to look like a liar. Like, Dad, I swear this is the first time stuff like this has happened. Like it was crazy. And but I'm not going to get into details or anything. Jeff Loeb was going through some personal stuff, like a death in the family at the time, either just prior to writing it or as he was writing it. And so that might have something to do with why it took such a dark turn and why it was the way that it was. So Ultimatum comes and goes. They decide, no, we're not ending it here. And again, I may have misunderstood something, and it was never intended to be the end. And there was some last minute changes and all of that kind of stuff. Like I read somewhere in some comment forum that somebody was one of the editors on Ultimatum or something, and said that they basically had no private life during that time because they were constantly getting called, come in, I've got some last minute changes by Loeb. And yeah, so Ultimatum comes and goes, and it's ripped apart by critics, by fans. Like, this is trash, this is garbage. And I don't know if it's like, I don't know exactly when, if I did understand things correctly and it was supposed to be the end. I don't know if it was because of like issue 1 or issue 2, whenever they started coming out. If Marvel was like, man, the way this is being received, we can't end this here like this kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, no, we need to let it go for a little bit more and all of that. But I think it went on for like another 6 years. Pretty sure. Well, like, because I think it came out in like 07 or 08. Something like somewhere around that window.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because the first incarnation of the Ultimate Universe ended with the 2015 Secret Wars by Jonathan Hickman. Yeah. and to me, that was a genius move, because that was the blending of mainline Marvel content. It was a blending of 616 in the Ultimate universe into not a new universe. Shout out to Jim Shooter. But just this, it was still basically 616 with a sprinkling of some Ultimates characters.
It was basically 616, but it's like, hey, we're pulling the most popular Ultimate characters from the Ultimate universe and slapping them into 616. That's basically what they did. Yeah. So yeah, like again, I know I've said it 1,000 times already. I may be mistaken things, but I'm pretty sure Ultimatum was supposed to end things with the Ultimate Universe. It did not. Things continued to run for another like 6 years, 6 or 7 years or something like that, until that event. And so then all of a sudden it's like, you basically have this arc smack dab in the middle, like give or take, of the Ultimate Universe's continuity that just completely upended everything. And now, moving forward, you don't have a lot of your major characters anymore because you killed them all. And some of them, I believe, were resurrected, because I didn't really mess with the Ultimate Universe that much after Ultimatum. Right. I'm not going to lie, I don't think I've read a single issue of anything after Ultimatum. So I don't know who, like, it's just kind of hearsay on my part. like that some characters came back to life or something like that. Just some of them, not all of them. You know what I mean?
I mean, I was never a huge Ultimates guy. I just know there's Miles Morales, of course, and the Ultimate version of Reed Richards, the Maker. So
Yeah, just to let you know, and just a very slight spoiler, just in case anyone was wondering, Spider-Man does make it out of Ultimatum. Probably the reason he does make it out of Ultimatum is because while all of that chaos is going on, the initial thing that causes this massive flood, Spider-Man pretty much chooses, I'm going to ignore what you people are fixing to go deal with, and I'm going to stay here and help as many people as I can. Which is about as much of a Peter thing as
yes.
you can do. Basically, like, I trust you guys. Y'all got this. Y'all can handle this. I'm going to stay here and help civilians. And I'm like, okay. So he's very much not in he's not in
the front lines.
He's not in the event itself. Like it barely, in the actual event, it does not have a whole lot going on with him. But he has his own single issues, because obviously while Ultimatum's going on, all the other individual titles are being tie-ins and all of that. And so, like, in his own individual title, it shows some of the stuff that he was going through and who he was helping and all of that. But yeah. So Ultimatum was a freaking disaster, despite me loving it. Me and me alone. Like,
I'll give it a shot. We'll let you know.
So yeah. Ultimatum comes and goes, doesn't do its job. New 52 comes. Things are looking bad. Again, had initial very high sales. It's tanking, like bad. And so DC decides, hey, why don't we reboot?
It's like I said earlier. Oh, it's Tuesday. Time for a reboot.
And so they decide that they're going to do this event that's called Convergence, in which it's basically
not well received.
It was not. I was so pumped for Convergence because it was basically going to be this battle royale between the DC multiverse, pretty much. And I was like, man, I can't wait to see like what they're going to do with this and all that. But it was in Convergence. Here's one thing that was cool about Convergence is that it was in Convergence that you find out Post-Crisis Superman is still there. And it's like, wait a minute. And not going to get into any spoilers or anything, but like, it involves him like going through like a wormhole type thing or whatever. And so they decide they're going to reboot. They're ending the New 52 and all of that. And they decide to wrap things up like with Superman and everything called, I think it was called Superman, The End of Days or something like that. Which the New 52 Superman is dying. They were essentially redoing the death of Superman. And I loved that story. Like, read the single issues as they were coming out. Freaking loved the way that they handled the death of the New 52 Superman. And so it was during that time that you pretty much find out Post-Crisis Superman has been in the New 52 universe the entire time. But he's just been kind of laying low to where it's like, I can't get involved. They already have a Superman kind of thing. And I think he showed up kind of like at the tail end or whatever. Like I say, he was there the entire time. It was really only like the last 4 or 5 years, because whenever we see him in Convergence, Lois just has their son John. And so whenever we see John again in the New 52, I think he's only like 5, 6, something like that. And so yeah, they do another mini series. I think it was just called Lois and Clark, or Clark and Lois, something like that. It was like a little 5-issue. I've got it up there. But it's like just a little 5 or 6 issue miniseries showing like what they were doing during the time of the New 52 and all of that. And yeah, pretty much at the end of the death of the New 52 Superman, whenever he dies, Post-Crisis Superman basically is like, okay, I'm going to take back over the role of Superman. And so he becomes Superman once again. And there's a few, there's a few stories and all that that involved certain characters don't trust him and all of that. And you have to understand like what he's going through on a personal level. It's like imagine whenever he goes to try and talk with Batman. That's his best friend.
Yeah.
And Batman's like, I have no idea who you are. Like, I knew this other guy. I don't know you. Kind of thing, Well, anywho, so they decide that was all still part of like Rebirth and New 52 and all that. But so they decide that they're going to reboot once again with an event called Rebirth. And Rebirth was very well received. And
third reboot.
And so Rebirth was going to happen and everything. And I remember reading the end because I didn't know this was coming. I don't think anybody knew it was coming. I read like the issue number 1 of like the Rebirth one shot special and all of that kind of stuff and everything. And like sitting there like flipping through, reading it and everything, and you get to the end, I'm gonna give the spoiler here. You get to the end and you see Owlman from like the New 52 and everything. He's in like the Mobius chair and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden you see there's somebody off panel kills him, just blows him up and everything. And you're like kind of confused, like what in the world happened here? And I can't remember exactly how it ends, but as you're reading somebody's thoughts or whatever, and like the last page is like, I can't even remember the teaser or whatever, but lets you know it's Dr. Manhattan from Watchmen.
Okay.
And I lost my freaking mind.
Okay, I remember we both did. I think I had like the sketch variant cover of Rebirth. I remember the issue ends with, there's like captions, somebody's narrating something, It's probably Manhattan. And Batman's like, there's something stuck in the wall here in the Batcave.
That's what it was. Yes.
And he pulls out the comedian's
the
button.
smiley face. Yeah. And I was just like, dude,
fans around the world.
Like I was ready. Because, I can't remember if we talked about it in the other episodes or not. I think I did. We're massive fans of Watchmen. Like, love the comic. I've got all the tie-ins, like the before Watchmen stuff, all in hardcover. I've got the Watchmen like movie companion. I've got this big collector set with each individual issue is a special hardcover and everything. I've got the movie. Freaking love the movie, that.
Yes.
And like, I'm a like massive fan of Watchmen. And so
arguably the complete cut is the greatest superhero movie ever.
You're not going to get any argument out of me. I'll tell you that.
It's just a fact, Jack.
So, like, massive Watchmen fan. And whenever I saw that, like, okay, there's some kind of crossover happening, like, I was just over the moon. I was so freaking happy. And then, like, again, I'm not going to jump into too much details or anything, but pretty much it all, like, to explain the New 52 is, like, after Dr. Manhattan leaves Watchmen, like, he says things like...
I think I'll go create some life.
Might experiment with creating life and stuff like that and everything. Well, he decided to, like, tamper with some timeline stuff and everything. And again, not going to get into any details, but it deals with, like, Alan Scott and all that. Deals with, like, he messes with, like, Alan Scott up there. I'm pointing my Alan Scott figure up there. But, like, it deals with, like, he messes with, like, something dealing with Alan Scott, like, way, like, golden age comic book stuff. And just that very small, minor adjustment that he made created the New 52. And so that was the in-universe reason as to why, like, whenever after Flashpoint happens, that's whenever Manhattan pretty much did his thing and New 52 was created and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, so everything pretty much gets set back on track. I don't think it was more of like a full blown reboot this time around, because I don't think like the old continuity was just turned back.
Right.
Like it was just like it was just things were changed. I think it was like more or less like DC was kind of like, hey guys, let's just pretend that the New 52 was this little plaything that Dr. Manhattan did, and let's just move on.
Yeah.
And we'll never mention it again.
Yeah, it's like, hey, remember those comics you loved after Crisis on It?
They count again, y'all. Like, they're back. Don't worry. And that's what's happened. And there hasn't been any more like actual reboots from DC, but they've done like some big like event, like, you know, the Dark Metal universe and everything. And there was like Dark Crisis, and you know, and the whole thing with like the dark. I have not read any of Dark Metal. I will get to it eventually, but the whole thing with that is like we already know that there's a multiverse. Well, then it's like there's a whole like dark multiverse where everything is like,
it's all edgy.
Yeah, edgy and evil and this and that. And I'm like, so Earth 3? Like, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, and so that's pretty much what the reboots and everything. That's a very, very, very in a nutshell like hour and 41-minute thing of the reboots and stuff like that with DC and everything.
The pitfalls of continuity.
Yeah, pretty much. Because that's the kind of junk that it leads to. And so now here we are, modern era. And I'm going to bring up, I'm pretty sure you guys get, I had ordered this Swamp Thing, Absolute Swamp Thing Volume 1 by Alan Moore the other day. It came in just before we started recording. Yeah. And I was so happy to be able to like have it to put, like, I was like, I've got to work this into the background somehow, because it's just freaking gorgeous. And I put it next to my Green Hell Swamp Thing. But talking about like continuity and all that, you know, it's tiring constantly having to, well, I want to read this. Do I have to read something else first? Do I have to, you know what I mean? Like, it's very nice to just read something and not have to worry about any of that.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought up Swamp Thing here is because I'm currently, like, I'm not going to get into the details of it, but like there's something that like got me into wanting to deal with Swamp Thing a little bit. And then I was in Books A Million. I saw Green Hell. I had never read that before, and so I scooped it up and read it. And it pretty much put me just on the, okay, I'm on a Swamp Thing kick now. And so I decided to go back and reread or read for the first time, because I've always read Swamp Thing here and there. Like, I've read bits and pieces of Alan Moore's run. You know, pretty much I read Swamp Thing during the New 52. I read him like with Rebirth, and like just prior to the New 52, I read like The Search for Swamp Thing.
That was great.
And all that. Like, I just, you know, I've read it here and there, but I've never really just like, okay, I'm going to start right here and go. And so that's what I decided to do. And so I'm currently reading the original run of Swamp Thing. And I told you on the phone the other day, I said, dude, it's so freaking refreshing to just pick up a comic and read it. You don't have to worry about, well, what's these tie-ins that's coming up, you know, and you don't, well, what's this event that's going to be happening later? Now, it's like, no, don't worry about it. Well, but what all do I need to read? Issue 1 through 40.
Yeah.
Go. Like, oh, that's it. That's simple, huh? Yep. No events, no tie-ins, no nothing. Start, middle, end. Knock yourself out. And yeah, it's freaking, you know, and these issues were written in a time where it's like, you know, each issue, there was an overarching story, but each issue pretty much has a beginning, middle, and end.
And it was pretty much standard practice at that time in the industry It was, I mean, it was like in writing at Marvel, I know. But I do know from reading comics of the period from DC, it was pretty much the same attitude where every issue is somebody's first issue.
Yeah.
And so they were written in such a way where you don't have to read 50 years of backstory. You don't have to take a college course in the history of whatever to understand what's going on.
Yeah.
You can just pick this up and, oh, okay, cool. And
Like,
it was all just built into the text.
The only thing that sucks is that it's so cheesy the way that they work it in sometimes, to where it's like, like I'll use Swamp Thing as an example, or Swamp Thing, Alec Holland, blows up and everything, or they think he's dead and all that kind of stuff. They don't know that he is the Swamp Thing. And so you get to like issue 3 or 4 or whatever, and the guy that's trying to chase him down, he's like, that was my friend, and and he thinks the Swamp Thing has something to do with it, so I'm hunting you down to get revenge or whatever. And it's stuff like, there'll be somebody that's with him and all that. And like at the very beginning of the issue, they're having like a conversation or something like that, and it's like, I'm just trying to catch that Swamp Thing, like just real over the top, like, and all that stuff. Well, then it's like, this other person will have a line of dialogue that's so freaking cheesy, because it's like, people don't talk like that. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's so cheesy to sit there and be like, yeah, I know, you've been running yourself crazy trying to chase that Swamp Thing ever since, you think he was responsible for killing your best friend, Alec Holland, in that crazy explosion that happened last week. It's just like, who talks like that? You know what I mean?
That and also you're dealing with like, in almost any issue of a comic, there's some sort of life-threatening event. Nobody curses.
No, nobody. Great Scott!
This blasted contraption, But classic comics are amazing,
dude. I love it. It's so refreshing to just sit there and read that stuff. But yeah, so
do you want to look at our proposal for fixing what things bogging down, or do you want to revisit that?
We can revisit that. I mean, we're knocking on almost 2 hours for this episode. We'll revisit that in a future episode and everything. But all I'm going to end things with is like also talking about like headcanon and stuff like that, and thinking about Swamp Thing and all of that. Is that Swamp Thing by no means has ended or anything like that. And so it's still like, they kind of pick it up here and there. It's not like this big ongoing title like Action Comics or Superman or anything like that. But they came out with Swamp Thing Green Hell. It's done by DC Black Label. That's pretty much their thing that they can use now to tell stories that's like not connected to the main universe and all that kind of stuff. And headcanon wise, after reading Green Hell, I'm perfectly fine with that being Swamp Thing's end.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so headcanon wise, kind of like a lot of Batman fans are like, everything leads to the Dark Knight Returns. To me, with Swamp Thing, everything leads to Green Hell. Perfectly fine with that. And also the last thing that I'm going to say as well, as I briefly mentioned it, was DC is starting. They're trying to take a page out of Marvel's book with the Ultimate Universe, and they're starting the Absolute Universe, which, they've tried doing this before with Earth 1 and all of that. Didn't really pan out. Like, each title had like 3 volumes a piece or whatever. We could talk about Earth 1 at some other point, because it's its own little self-contained thing at this point. It never really crossed over with the main universe or anything like that. So it really is just this really self-contained little pocket, DC in the DC multiverse and all that. And that's kind of cool. I love Superman Earth 1 volumes 1, 2, and 3. Like, that's just some great Superman stories to me. But they tried that, didn't really pan out too well because people were just losing interest in it. Like, they're not done in issues. It was just graphic novels.
I think that may have hurt them as well.
And sometimes, I mean, like, I'll use, you have Superman Earth 1, Volume 1 comes out in like 2000, 2009, 2010, something like that.
Yeah.
Volume 2 didn't come out until like 2014. Yeah. Like, I mean, if I'm thinking correctly, I think that's it. But yeah, it was just like it didn't really pan out too well. And so then, and we know they tried with the All-Star universe, critically acclaimed Grant Morrison run with All-Star Superman.
One of the best Superman stories ever.
Critically panned by Frank Miller with All-Star Batman and Robin.
It holds a special place in my heart.
It does. It does. Like, we'll talk. That's the Miller episode, and boy, do I have some things to say.
That's gonna be a fun episode, man.
It is. Like, but yeah. So, they've tried multiple times to kickstart something kind of like the Ultimate Universe, but it seems like if they can keep the traction that they've picked up so far in about these first five issues or so per title, I think this Absolute Universe is going to be a winner for them.
They need a winner.
I'm enjoying it so far. Yeah. So, what you got to say?
Well, I honestly don't see Marvel doing any kind of company-wide reboot anytime soon.
No, I don't.
There will be events that may change status quo, but that's still a totally different animal than a reboot. And the difference being, again, like I said earlier in the episode, Marvel was designed from the beginning to be a shared universe, and DC wasn't.
Yeah.
And because they really didn't get into the shared universe stuff until the 60s, and even then it was kind of sporadic. There you see where the paths diverge and the different remedies taken by each company.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I personally feel that continuity is like a necessary evil, but it could be handled better and more reader friendly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it could. I mean, we're going to talk about this like in a future episode and everything, but there's this big thing right now about the comic industry. Not really versus, but just I don't know any other way to put it, like the comic industry versus the manga industry. And it's like you have like I think it was just one manga title outsold the entire comic book, like North American comic book industry in like 1 year or 1 month or something I can't remember what it was, but it was like, oh my God, kind of thing, and you and me was talking about it the other day, but yeah, we're not going to jump into that. Like I said, we're knocking on 2 hours for this episode and all that, and so yeah, that's an episode for another time, but that's one thing that I think manga does have the one up on when it comes to comics is that
largely self-contained.
Well, let's just use I'll use a big popular one as an example that you and I are both fans of, Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like, oh yeah, yeah. But yeah, Dragon Ball, like okay, well, I want to read the original Dragon Ball. Okay, well, here's like volumes 1 through 14, however many they are. Okay, what else do I need? Nothing. That's it. That's all it is to them. No tie-ins. No, just there you go. So you read that. Okay. Okay. Well, what comes next? Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah.
And here's 1 through 20 volumes or whatever. There you go. Read that, and then after that, okay, what's next? Super. It's ongoing right now. So here's volume 1 through whatever volume they're on right now. Read it. Well, just like that, that's 3 separate titles that someone can just blow through and be like, okay, I'm good. I'm done.
Yeah. And
from that point on, you can jump into the TV shows. You can watch the original. You can watch Kai. You can watch abridged. You can watch. There's so many different things that you can jump into from there.
GT
and all that. Yeah, GT and all that. Like, I like GT, but I like a lot of unpopular things. But yeah, it's like you can do that. Well, like you think of Dragon Ball, you look at Dragon Ball. That is a powerhouse of an IP.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And it has a beginning, Dragon Ball, a middle, Z, and an end, Super, pretty much. Well, Super, I'm not going to get into that. But, yeah, like it just, you can do that. As big of a powerhouse of an IP as that is, you can just jump into it.
Yeah.
And blow your way through it. And it's as easy as all get out. Dragon Ball's number 1. That's what you start with. Volume 1, go to the end. Like, once you get to the end of that, Dragon Ball Z, Volume 2, go, and that's it. Just read all 3 of those, and it's done.
Yeah.
You don't need to, well, what about this miniseries, or that little tie-in, or this little, 6 issues that was done over here? No, you don't have to worry about any of that. And I think that's why manga really has the one-up on the comic industry in a lot of ways, is that it's so much simpler to understand.
Well, that, and this just clicked for me. From the standpoint of events and reboots, we're going to be getting into events. Largely these days, a lot of events are seen as money grabs.
Mm-hmm.
Or desperate attempts to boost sales, if only temporarily, until the next status quo changing event.
Oh, yeah.
There's not really that in manga.
No.
It's out of the gate, introduce characters, this is the problem, this is what they're doing, it happens, end. And so you could say what manga has kept in mind that the big 2 have forgotten at times is focus on the story. If you tell a good story and present it in a very digestible manner with a good price point, you're golden.
Yeah. But it is what it is. They're going to keep doing what they're doing, and better or worse, we're going to keep reading and getting frustrated. And yeah. So, I don't know. I don't really have a whole lot else to say.
Yeah,
as far as this one goes.
Yeah, like I said, necessary evil, but the big 2 could handle it better.
They could. They absolutely could. And I think they need to handle it better. Because with dwindling sales here and there, I don't think the comic book, okay, how do I word it? The comic industry, I think, is doing very well.
Yeah.
Overall. Movies, TV shows, merchandise, just everything overall is doing very well. The comic book industry needs some help.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what the future is going to hold for it and all that, because like you and me talked about on the phone the other day, like our generation is pretty much, we're the ones holding on to it right now.
Yeah.
And after us, I don't see a whole lot of young kids. I say kids, and even teenagers. I don't see a lot of young people reading comics. I don't see a lot of them in comic book shops. I don't see a lot of them, whenever I go to Books A Million and I'm over there looking at the graphic novel section and everything, I never see young people over there. I see people our age there.
Well, okay. And there, I would say the key ingredient is accessibility. They have manga at Walmart, at Target now.
Yeah.
But in order to get single issue floppies of Thor or Superman or X-Men, you have to go to a comic specialty shop.
What year did Hastings close down?
That would be 2016.
2016. It is 2025. Where we live, the closest comic shop to us after Hastings closed down in 2015, the closest comic shop to us was an hour and a half away.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of 2024, we just now got a shop back that sells floppies.
Yeah.
And it's really just floppies. They have a very limited amount of
Trade.
trades. Like, I mean, I've
Tons of back issues.
Oh yeah, tons of back issues. But yeah, it's like 2015. You said so. 2016 to 2024. That's how long we went with no immediate access to floppies. Like, it was literally like
it was like John the Baptist. I'm a voice in the wilderness, looking for the light. You know.
But yeah, like, but meanwhile, like he said, you go to Target, manga galore. You go to Walmart, manga galore.
Yeah.
I mean, probably won't be long. I mean, I ain't been in one in a long time, so I don't know. They may already have. It won't be long before you can find manga in Dollar Generals. Like,
I haven't seen it yet, but
but that seems like a place they would be though eventually.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, so you know,
we want royalties if that plan gets implemented.
Yeah. Okay. Copyright right there.
Kodansha, Viz, you heard it here.
Yeah. So you know, I don't know. Whatever. You know, part of me looks at it's like, oh, you know, like the comic industry has gone through worse. You know what I mean? But they've been around since, you know, the 30s, superheroes and all that. So maybe they'll keep on going pretty good, pretty strong and everything, as long as they got people like you and me that's going to buy things like that. Like, they're going to keep on rolling.
Oh, yeah. And as we've said earlier, we will be doing an episode on just events and probably an episode on, like, our proposal to kind of solve a lot of problems for the American comic industry. And that's one thing I really enjoy about our talks is we're not just fanboying about our favorite characters. I mean, we're discussing the industry and our love of this thing that
I think it's safe to say that if like you and me, other than like doing something for ourselves, like, you know, like maybe even owning like a comic shop or something like that, or even, you know, like to loop that in there or whatever, I think it would be safe to say that me and him's like dream jobs would be to somehow be involved in the comic book industry.
In some manner.
Like, in some manner. Yeah. Whether that's like owning a comic shop or, you know, writing, like anything, you know, like we would jump at something like that. So it's not like we're not coming at this just simply, as he said, just fanboys. Like, I wish they would do that. Like, no, like we're sitting here like, hey, we got some input. Like, you know,
I mean, we love the art form, and my love of comics extends far beyond superheroes. I love, you know, slice of life stuff. I have complete runs. I actually have a list of just complete series.
Archie fans right here. Okay, Bone.
Yeah,
it's not just superheroes. Like,
no, Bone, Cerebus, A Distant Soil, Bacchus.
Like, yeah. Do Ninja Turtles count as superheroes?
Yeah.
Okay. Just G.I. Joe. G.I. Joe. Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah. All right. Transformers. So. Like, but yeah, I think that pretty much does it for this episode. Thank you for letting us ramble on for 2 hours. If you've made it to the end, you are a champion. Let me go ahead and tell you that. Even if it took you multiple, you know, if you had to take breaks, more power to you. But yeah.
Hit us up with comments. What are some stuff, you know, maybe we missed?
I'm sure we missed some stuff.
Or, you know, points that maybe we didn't get across as cleanly as we'd like that you'd like to comment on. We're anxious to hear that stuff.
Yeah. You know, any comments that you got is well appreciated. As always, you know, like the video, subscribe. That really helps me out and everything with the algorithm and all that kind of stuff. I've got a little over 2,000 followers so far, but that was primarily because of the kaiju content that I was doing before. So this is a brand new avenue that we're jumping into, like with this superhero stuff, and we're not just going to talk about like superhero stuff. We're going to talk about like anime and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Eventually, we're going to jump into
yeah.
way more stuff. But we're really using the comic book stuff as the launching pad, just because we know a lot about it. So so yeah, I think that pretty much does it. So alrighty, guys. The next episode that we're going to do, we're going to be talking about events, like our favorite events that worked out, events that didn't work out,
The good,
things
the
like
bad,
that.
and the ugly.
Pretty much. So alrighty, guys. We'll catch y'all next time. I'm Cal.
I'm Ian.
We're those podcast guys.
Support your local comic shop.